Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony, and today I'm going to be talking to you about another topic that is very close to my heart. It's a topic that I learned when I took sociology back in my earlier years of college. The topic is called gentrification. Gentrification is the movement of people. More specifically, it's actually the movement of poorer people to other parts while people with more wealth move to these old places that the poor people were in. So a really popular place that used to be mostly poor people was the Lower East Side. The Lower East Side used to be populated with Hispanics, blacks, and other minorities. However, in these day and ages, it's mostly populated by people with more money, or my favorite term, trust fund babies. And you see them in bars and stuff, and I just don't understand why gentrification happens. So I decided to start digging, and I noticed that gentrification was actually happening closer to me than I thought. So one day I was in the L train and I noticed that there were a lot of Americans riding the train towards Bushwick, which is near where I live. And when I was growing up, my dad used to take me on Bushwick all the time. So I knew that something was up. So I decided to start digging again, and I noticed that there were actually a lot of new things being built there, like condos and co-ops, which were mainly for people with money. So I decided to stipulate something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. In the future, I plan to be a landlord, and Bushwick was actually the first place that I wanted to own my first home. So I decided to do a project on it, and well, I'll guide you through it right now. So as you can see here, this is like a small income statement. It tells you the rental income that I made throughout a 15-year period for two homes. The first home is meant to purchase actually the second home, which I learned that from a real life landlord. He said usually that's what you do. You use the first home to purchase the second one by using the first one as collateral. But I've decided to go on the straight and narrow and actually just use the money I make from the first home to purchase the second one. So, how did I get these calculations? Let's see. The first way I did was, for the mortgage, I made an amortization schedule. The amortization schedule, as you know, depicts all of the payments that you make. Now, most people fail to realize that a mortgage usually is not the full amount of the house. It's not the full cost. It's usually 80% of what the house is worth. So the reason I say that is because I made a mortgage information page where you can see the original cost of the house was $895,000 for the first house, and the mortgage was $716,000, which is exactly 80% of the house. I made the mortgage 15 years because, as we know, banks, they love to charge interest if you take 30 years. Well, a lot more interest, I should say. They still charge you interest if you take 15. Also, we have a second house here, which is the one I'm going to use the money from the first house to purchase. And as you can see here, the home cost is approximately $1.4 million, and the mortgage is $1.1 million. Now, let's keep going now back to the amortization schedule. Now, the amortization schedule shows the original cost of the house, which was $716,000. I shouldn't say the original cost, but the mortgage of the house was $716,000. And if you go all the way down to the end, you can see that there's a big fat zero at the end because you've paid off all the mortgage. The total interest for the mortgage is $181,478. And of course, the principal is equal to the mortgage, as you can see there. Now, let's look at the second mortgage. The second mortgage was exactly the same as the first, except I had to look at other factors. Since the second mortgage was going to be in the future, approximately, I should say 15 years in the future, I had to look at projections by financial analysts, and I found out that the mortgage rate for our current year is approximately 4%, but in the year 2030, it's going to be approximately 6.5 to 7%. So I'm an optimist, so I decided to use 6.5%. So that's the reason why the interest is much higher here than in my previous one. Yeah, I would say it's approximately triple the interest. So that's why getting a 30-year mortgage might actually kill you. So let's get back to the project. So in order to calculate the amount of rent that I would charge my tenants, I decided to make a solver. So the solver, the way I used it, the way I figured it was, on average, you usually don't retain your tenants for every single year. Usually 80% of the time, and that's the optimistic view, your tenants are not there. So as you can see, the ones and the zeros, this shows that tenant 1 may be there, and then tenant 2 is also there. But if you see a 0, that means that tenant 2, for example, you see in year 4, he's not there. So I would have to charge a certain amount of rent to tenant 1, but I wouldn't know how much I would have to charge him, since I want to collect enough money to purchase my second home. So I created a solver where I ran the scenario that if 80% of the time my tenants weren't there, how much would I charge the one tenant in the first home, for example. So I figured for year 4, for example, I would have to charge them $63,501 in order to get the amount needed the amount that I needed in order to not only pay off all of my expenses for the 15 years, but I would also be able to I was able to put the down payment on the second home. I did the same analysis for the property 2 that I have here, except I only made it so one tenant at a time would not be there. It would still be 80% of the time, of course, as my original analysis states. And as you can see, I have 2 solvers here. If I quickly load them, you can see all of the constraints that I made. So we go here to the data tab right here, and we go to solver and we load. We press load, we press replace, and here's all of the constraints that I used for the first one. The second one has the exact same constraints, except it has different numbers. Here, as you can see, is my rental income, and if you look at the very end, it has the amount of money for my down payment for my house, which is right here, $279,800. As you can see, the amount of the amount of money that I have to charge my tenants is crazy. On the first home, I have to charge them almost $5,000 per month, and on the second home, I have to charge them $6,000 per month. So as you can see, gentrification is really going epic here. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have an awesome day.